On January 4, 2012, an anonymous user by the name of 3301 posted this strange image to the Something Else forum on 4chan. What appeared to be a simple picture of some rocks turned out to be anything but. Hidden within the photo was a complex cipher which, when solved, revealed an entirely new set of instructions. This marked the beginning of one of the most elaborate internet mysteries ever seen, which has come to be known as Cicada 3301. In today's video, we'll break down the mystery and walk through all of the puzzles and ciphers involved step by step, so stick around if you want to see how it all works. Getting started is simple. First things first, right? You may have noticed that the username 3301 is just a number. If we take that number and reverse it, we get 1330, which happens to be the binary value for the character code 520 in ASCII. Converting that gives us the letter A, and then taking the next two characters in line gives us BB. So now we have A, B. We can take these two letters and look them up in a dictionary to find their corresponding values. A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and so on. This gives us the numbers 12. Now we can go out and find the 12th prime number, which is 31. Finally, we can use the modulo operator to take 3301 divided by 31, giving us a remainder of 9. Now we can go back to our alphabet and look for the 9th letter, which is E, put it all together and we get the word AB9E. The next step is to figure out what to do with this word. It turns out that this is a hexadecimal string, which is a special type of base 16 encoding. So far we've decoded the message from the image and found another encoded message, but there's still something odd here. If we decode the message, we end up with some random characters and none of it makes sense. Upon closer inspection, we notice that the message contains 3 sections, separated by angle brackets. And if we ignore everything in between, we get a somewhat coherent-looking message. When we take a closer look, we realize that the message is simply gibberish, but the word puzzle seems to stand out amongst the jumbled mess. And sure enough, the word puzzle is hidden amongst the non-English characters. Unfortunately, this isn't a very secure cipher, and we can simply try different combinations until we figure out what the password is. And after a bit of trial and error, we find that the password is private. This decrypts the message, giving us the text. If you understand entropy, you will know what to do next. For those who aren't familiar, entropy is a concept in information theory that measures the amount of disorder or randomness in a system. In the world of cryptography, it refers to the use of random data, often referred to as a seed, to generate cryptographic keys. If we take this phrase to the nth power, where n is the length of the phrase, and then apply the mod function with a divisor equal to 256, this gives us a list of numbers that correspond to characters in the ASCII table. Using this method we can derive the key 99, 8C, 69, 6C, 74, 72, 6F, 7079. Now we can use this key to decrypt the message in the image, which turns out to be another version of the same image. As it turns out, this image wasn't actually the starting point of the game at all. It was only the first stage. To see what else they had in store, players needed to go to a website called outguess.org, which is a tool used for solving riddles and puzzles that contain hidden information. After reading through the instructions, we can start guessing. The goal is to guess a solution while keeping track of the feedback we receive after each guess. For example, if our guess contains a number and the feedback says that the number is correct, but in the wrong place, we can mark that number as C for correct, but not in the right position. If the feedback says that the number is both correct and in the right place, we can mark it as C for correct and in the right place. As we make more guesses, we can update the feedback accordingly. This process is repeated until we have guessed the secret word or phrase. In this case, the target word is made up of 5 groups of characters, where each group contains either a letter and a number or 2 letters. We can start by trying something simple, maybe a word like attack. After making a few guesses and getting some feedback, we can update our possible solutions. Our guess allows us to input the feedback in the form of a regular expression, and it will tell us how many possible solutions remain. At this point, we have whittled down the possible solutions to a single word. That word is, drumroll please, E shiny rim. If we take the first letter from each word in the phrase, we get the word erema, which is almost a palindrome. All that's missing is the letter R, but luckily we already have that number in our possession, don't we? Just kidding. We actually have to figure out where to put it. If we take the phrase E shiny rim and remove the R, we are left with E shiny mints. If we count the number of characters in the original phrase, we find that there are 18 characters. If we count the number of characters in the modified phrase, we find that there are 17 characters. This means that we need to insert the R somewhere in the phrase. It doesn't really matter where we put it though, since every possible combination ends up with the same result. Now we can use this phrase to unlock the next clue. We can take each character in the phrase and shift it forward in the alphabet by the number of spaces equal to its index in the phrase. So for example, the first character E would be shifted forward one space to become F. The next character S would be shifted forward 2 spaces to become U, and so on. Doing this for every character gives us the phrase find me. At this point, the game took a slightly different approach. Rather than providing a direct clue, the creators of the game created a Reddit account under the name Find Me and posted the following message. They say those who seek me are not those who find me. This is a quote from the Tao Te Ching, an ancient Chinese text and the foundation of Taoism. They also provided the book's author Lao Tzu, along with his approximate lifespan. With this information, we can figure out the next step. The first thing we can do is calculate the number of pages in the book. According to the sidebar of the Find Me subreddit, the book contains 100 chapters, each with a maximum of 50 verses. Therefore, the book contains no more than 5,000 verses. Now we can do some date math. Lao Tzu lived sometime between 600 BC and 300 BC, a span of 300 years. So the minimum number of pages would be 300 and the maximum would be 5,000. But wait, there's more. The poster also said that the book was translated by Jockham's Red Pine. If we Google search for books containing the phrase Tao Te Ching Red Pine, we find that he has published 2 different translations. The first one is titled The Tao Te Ching, a New English version, and the second one is titled Tao Te Ching, translated from the Chinese of Lao Tzu Red Pine. If we look at the number of pages in each book, we find that the first one has 208 pages and the second one has 324 pages. Looking back at the number of pages in the book, we can narrow it down even further. So the book must have between 208 and 324 pages, and now the game shifts to a different platform. The next clue can be found on Pastebin, under the titled Book Clues. Here we find a list of 10 clues that correspond to different parts of the book. To use these clues, we first need to figure out how to number the pages in the book. We can easily find the page numbers by performing a simple calculation. We can add the number 1 to the book's chapter number and then multiply it by 3. So for example, the first chapter would be on page 3, the second chapter would be on page 6, and so on. Using this method, we can figure out the corresponding pages for each clue, and cross-reference them with a list of book clues. To do this, we're going to write a small Python program that takes a chapter number as input and then returns the corresponding page number. Now we can loop over each clue and see which clue goes with which page number. Once we figure out which clues go with which pages, we can combine them to form a single sentence. Doing so reveals the word Cicada 3301. At this point, it looked as though the game was coming to an end. However, there were still some unanswered questions. What is the purpose of this game? Who created it? Is this a publicity stunt? And if so, what is it for? Why are we playing? There were a lot of questions but no answers. Luckily, there was one last piece of information hidden in the Pastebin post. It was a PGP signature. PGP stands for Pretty Good Privacy, and is a way to digitally sign documents. In short, it allows one party to encrypt a message and the other party to verify that it came from the intended sender. If we copy and paste this signature into an online PGP checker, we can find out who signed it. But hold on a second. If we scroll all the way up to the top of the post, we find another PGP signature. If we check this signature, we find that it was signed by a different person. So this post was originally signed by this person, but then it was edited and the new version was signed by this person. This isn't too surprising given that it is a subreddit after all and multiple people could have access to it. So let's take a look at the original version. There isn't much difference between the original and the new version. The main difference being the removal of the signature from the bottom and the addition of the signature from the top. Everything else is exactly the same. So this means that the first signature is the original signature, and thus the person who signed it must be the creator of Cicada 3301. But wait, there's more. If we go back to the original post on Reddit and use a Chrome extension, we can find the IP address of the person who posted it. But this raises more questions than it answers. Not only does it tell us nothing about who the person is, but it could easily be spoofed. The question of who is behind the game remains unanswered. This has been a summary of Cicada 3301. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy my video on the Beale ciphers, which is an unsolved mystery from America's colonial past. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.